from Kansas.
I ask unanimous consent to lift the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, Clay Hunt is a Marine veteran who committed suicide in March 2011 at the age of 28. Clay enlisted in the Marine Corps in May of 2005, and he was deployed to the Anbar province near Fallujah in January of 2007. He was shot in the wrist by a sniper's bullet that barely missed his head, and it earned him the Purple Heart. Clay recuperated at 29 Palms, California, and then graduated from Marine Corps Scout Sniper School in March of 2008, and he was redeployed to southern Afghanistan just a few weeks later. His unit returned to the United States in late October 2008, and he was honorably discharged from the Marines in April 2009. After he returned home, Clay suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. He struggled for many years, and he struggled with inadequate care from his local VA hospital before taking his own life. The Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act passed the House of Representatives just a little while ago this week. And I believe this is an important piece of legislation. I serve on the Senate Veterans Committee, and we had testimony related to suicide prevention, suicide among our veterans just a few weeks back. And it is so clear in Kansas and across the country that many veterans and their families deserve something much more than we're able to provide, that we are providing now. And this legislation, which will help in that regard, deserves swift passage by the United States Senate. This bill, the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act, would be instrumental in developing a VA system capable of offering first-class, first-rate mental health care services, as well as utilizing the expertise of outside organizations to provide support for those struggling with the invisible wounds of service. That legislation would require third parties to conduct an annual evaluation of suicide prevention programs within the Department of Veterans Affairs and within the Department of Defense. It would also provide for a new website that would offer veterans information regarding available mental health care services. It would create a joint pilot loan repayment program for VA psychiatrists. There's a tremendous shortage of VA professionals that this would help alleviate, and it will improve the exchange of training, best practices, and other resources among the VA, veteran service organizations, and not-for-profit mental health organizations to enhance the cooperation of their efforts in suicide prevention. During that Veterans Affairs Committee hearing on November the 19th last month, we were honored to hear Clay's story from his mom, Susan Silke. Susan shared her son's story of reliving the traumatic experience of war and his disappointment when the VA failed to offer him the care he needed to treat his circumstance. In fact, it was one of the most compelling, again, I've served on the Veterans Affairs Committee since I came to Congress, and this mother's testimony was one of the most important pieces of information I've heard from a witness during a committee hearing. And what she indicated was that in her belief, and she indicated that she believed her son thought this as well, that it was the VA bureaucracy, the inability, the unwillingness, the falling through the cracks, the culture that we have heard described at the Department of Veterans Affairs that was the straw that broke the camel's back and that caused her son to commit suicide. We've ranted, we've raved, we've highlighted, we've pointed out, we've discussed the VA and its problems, its bureaucracy, its culture, its failure of leadership, its service to the VA as compared to its service to veterans many times over many years. And we often bemoan bureaucracy among all federal agencies, but it's especially important at the Department of Veterans Affairs because while its easy to talk about the bureaucracy, the paperwork, the shuffling, the falling through the cracks. This mother's testimony about the death of her son indicated that it's not just about bureaucracy. It's not just about paperwork. It's not just about a culture. Those things contribute to the death of a human being, and in this case, contributed to the death of one who served our country nobly. So we can bemoan the bureaucracy, but we need to remember that it is that circumstance that causes the loss of life. Suicide is something that needs to be addressed. We need to have a concerted effort, and legislation that is now pending before the Senate, that needs to be passed before this Senate concludes, is one step that we can take to make certain that there are less circumstances in which a soldier, a veteran, commits suicide. I can't imagine the heartache, the difficulty, the challenge that comes from a mom coming to Washington, D.C. and testifying about the death, the suicide of her son. I don't know how to put myself in that position, but I know it has to be a tremendously difficult, traumatic experience. And the reason that she must do that is because she wants to make certain that other sons of other parents, of other mothers, have a different experience than the one she, her family, and her son experienced. Mr. President, it's clear we have a problem. It's critical that the VA follow through on its commitment, on its responsibilities to our nation's veterans. They must follow through to those veterans who are just returning home, those that have been home a long time, and to their families who need to have the love and support and care of the VA and the American people. We got to keep working to find solutions to the issues of mental health that our servicemen and women and veterans now face. And we must hold the VA accountable for their responsibilities when it comes to providing for the needs of those veterans. And that care and treatment must be provided in a timely, high quality, and in a specialized way that meets the needs of each individual veteran and their family. Mr. President, my presence on the Senate floor this evening is to highlight the importance of the passage of the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act, to pay honor and tribute to Clay Hunt and to his family, and to the hundreds of individuals and families across the country who have faced similar circumstances, and call us to the point that we recognize that steps taken today can make certain that there are no more Clay Hunts, no more mothers who face the circumstance of the loss of their son, and that America lives up to its commitment to those we've called to duty. I urge my colleagues to make certain that this legislation passes the United States Senate before we recess for this holiday period. Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I yield the floor. I notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call.